Dallas Wings executive Greg Bibb is here. We have a lot to talk about on the court and off the court. Locked On Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi, everyone, and happy Tuesday to you. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making Locked On Women's Basketball your first listen every day. And we have been killing it all summer long. You guys have been showing up for us, over 100,000 listeners each month, all season long. We are on pace to break our July mark here in August. Thank you for making us a critical part of your everyday. And of course, it's not just me, it is the incredible team over at thenexthoops.com, where we have over 100 reported pieces on women's basketball every single month, a reporter in all 12 WNBA markets. Subscribe, $9 a month, $72 a year. Support the work that's being done there, thenexthoops.com. And there's been quite a bit of work being done about the Dallas Wings, who are a very intriguing team. Of course, delighted that not only over at the Next, where we have the great Ari Graham, but also at the 9, where we've been running Maddie Segrist diaries every 2 weeks, cataloging Maddie's rookie season with the Dallas Wings. But I have Greg Bibb here to talk about not just what's going on the court with some clear success stories, but a really interesting partnership. And so here in segment 1, Greg, before we get into it, I just want our listeners to have a sense of the partnership that was made with the Dallas Mavericks, because it's interesting what's in it. It's interesting what flexibility comes along with it. But there's a jersey partnership. There's the ability to work together year round to make sure that the Mavs and the Wings are together on everything from player development right through to the way in which you guys are engaging with the community. So congratulations on this deal. Take me through, if you could, sort of what are the top lines of like, what were the most important parts of it in your view?
First, Howard, thanks for having me. It's great to be back on Locked On. The partnership with the Mavericks is really a relationship that started pre-COVID. Cynthia Marshall, who is the CEO of the Mavericks, and I met in early March of 2020 to talk about how we could formalize a relationship between our two organizations. Because at that time, the Mavericks were really starting to lean in on gender equity type issues. And with being the WNBA team in town, Cint saw natural synergy between the two organizations, as did I. We had a fantastic launch conversation. And then about 10 days later, the world was introduced to COVID-19 and the world stopped. Over the next couple of years, our organizations increased the frequency of doing one-off events together, most of them community focused, and most of them related to a program that the Mavericks launched called GEM, Girls Empowered by Mavericks. This past April, when the women's Final Four was in Dallas, Cint and I found ourselves at a bunch of events together, and it really allowed us the opportunity to chat. And we committed to one another that we were going to re-engage, trying to formalize a relationship that would be sustainable for years to come. Mm-hmm. Cint is a avid and loyal Wings season ticket holder. So that conversation continued into the start of the season at some early Wings games. We got our leadership teams involved, which for the Wings involved Amber Cox, our Chief Operating Officer, and Amanda Fushi, who is our Vice President of Corporate Partnerships. Those two took the lead for us. They did the heavy lifting along with Cint's leadership team. And what resulted was a multi-year relationship that really, at the end of the day, is community focused. And really, the vision is to impact the community, specifically girls in North Texas, really extending the work that the Mavericks have already begun through their GEM program. For us, it's an opportunity to partner with a NBA team and to lean into a very big platform. For them, it's an opportunity to plug into the best women's basketball players on the planet and to utilize our assets to help extend their GEM programming. It's truly going to be a 1+1 = far more than 2 relationship, and we're super excited about it.
I am delighted that you mentioned Amber and her team, and Amber being an absolute superstar. And we're going to get into the ways in which, to me, it's tangible, the impact that she's had as well. But again, I want to go back to your vision of it, because I think it's a really interesting arc that we've seen. Over the years, there was a lot of tropes that frankly aren't even accurate about the NBA and the WNBA and the relationship there. We've seen, though, over these past few years, this obviously exponential growth in the value, the understanding of the value of a WNBA franchise. And I wonder, as you kind of think it long term, whether these types of partnerships, right? This is short of there's co-ownership. This is significantly short of this is co-ownership between these two organizations. There are organizations that have overlap, and there are organizational principles that are different. There are goals that are different. Does this strike you as a really effective model for the way in which, when they're in the same town, NBA and WNBA teams ought to be thinking about working together?
I hope so. And listen, this did not happen overnight. Like I mentioned, the first conversation between Cint and I was in March of 2020. And obviously the Wings, have been in market since late 2015, first season 2016. Here we are in August of 2023. So by no means was this an overnight process, but I think we had the ingredients for something special in that we had an NBA team, an NBA team leadership that sees the value in the WNBA and understands what the WNBA is all about, and really what the DNA of a WNBA team happens to be. And for us, it's not hard to see the value of an NBA team, the profile, the platform that they present. And when you have people like Cint Marshall and her leadership team running the show for an NBA franchise, it's pretty easy to see how you can create synergy and opportunity together. And, hopefully we can be an inspiration or a model for other markets where there is not a co-ownership situation. I think that what the Mavs and the Wings have done is the biggest, largest, deepest, widest partnership ever between a non-affiliated NBA and WNBA team. And someone has to be first, and it just happens to be us in this case. And hopefully we can be a model for others.
You talked about Jen Fushi also, who was a superstar as well. And it's interesting to me, and you can speak to this in a way I think that's really interesting. The conversation with Cint predates Amber arriving in town, Jen arriving in town. How much, when you're talking to the two of them, are you talking about ways in which to incorporate this type of partnership? And I say that, and our listeners should understand that in both cases, you're talking about folks who have been in markets where there were WNBA, NBA co-owned teams, Amber out in Phoenix, but also even just the overlap between literally a WNBA team and a lacrosse team. To be able to have that specific level of expertise. I'm just wondering how that all came together.
Well, we're fortunate that we have not one, but two Fushis. We have Jen, who is our vice president of ticket sales and service.
Right.
Then we have her wife, Amanda,
Yes,
who is our vice president of corporate partnerships. All three, those two, along with Amber, have been involved in the formation of this formalized partnership. But really, Amber and Amanda took the lead. Okay. And it really didn't take much on my part, because really it was conceptual with Cint and I. Mm-hmm. And then Amber and Amanda on our team, and then folks on Cint's team were the ones who really articulated the elements and the assets involved and the strategy involved in what the partnership became. So really wasn't anything I did. The heavy lifting was done by Amber, Amanda, and others within our front office. LaDondra Wilson, who is our VP of social responsibility, has also had a long-standing relationship with the Mavericks. And with this being so community focused, she too plays a role here. So, Cint and I, like a lot of times, get to take credit for things that really the work was done by others.
The bottom line with what you want this to be, and we'll talk more about this in segment 2, because I think it's so interesting how forward facing it is, but can this provide the kind of roots that I know, and we've talked about this for years, the roots that you want the Dallas Wings to have in this community over time? Obviously, you can think about the arc of the franchise, and this is a franchise that's moved around over the period of time in WNBA history. Does it feel like that is sort of a critical central part to what you're looking for here?
Yeah, I think it's just additional roots that can take root for us in the marketplace. And, really there's obviously a financial component that helps the team business. But really what this allows us to do, first and foremost, it allows us to reinvest, pour into the community, extend what we're doing there. But it also is really impactful for our players at a time when more and more players are staying home in the offseason, at least for part of it. Here's another outlet for them. We've already had Wings players doing internships with the Mavericks in our offseason. Isabel Harrison, for example, did one a couple of years ago. We will continue that now in a more formal way as part of this overall partnership between the Mavs. So really it's about community and it's about player investment for us. And the Mavs are another vehicle for that.
It's really interesting. And again, the impact on and off the court is something I'm eager to talk about. We're going to get into in just a minute in segment 2. Just first, want to tell the good people at home about FanDuel, and football season is about to kick off. FanDuel is giving you the chance to win all season long. Great. I don't know if there's is there a football team in Dallas? I've mostly been focused on the Wings. I think there might be.
There may be one about a mile down the road.
I'll have to look into that. But FanDuel is giving everyone the chance when you bet on a Super Bowl winner to get bonus bets every time that team wins in the regular season. So you pick any team to win the Super Bowl and you get bonus bets for every victory. You can use your bonus bets on spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. You just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. That's FanDuel.com/LOCKEDON and start earning bonus bets with America's #1 sportsbook. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. So when we think about Dallas on and off the court, to me, they go hand in hand. And so I just want to, throw out some numbers for us as a sense, to kind of frame where we are. Season 1, you guys averaged 5,297 fans per game in 2016. There's been some time down from that number. I think attendance numbers are really tricky to try and parse over this last period of a couple of years, simply because, as everything got thrown up in the air. But it's notable to me that you guys are right there. And season 1 is also never a great indicator of where things ought to be. But you are just a couple of hundred per game shy of that. You're 46.92 coming into the stretch run, where presumably you can expect, especially with the way the team is playing, for that number to go up fairly considerably. That's before you even get to the playoffs. And I frame it that way because I'm curious, when you think about where this team ought to be financially where you want it to go, what does average attendance look like? What are the other metrics that you're seeing? And, how are you guys along on that road to where you want to get to?
Well, Howard, I think we here in Dallas are representative of what's happening across the WNBA and women's sports in general. We're fortunate that we're in a boom era. Someone who's been involved in the WNBA since 2007, we are meeting and exceeding wildest dreams from way back then. We're up about 30% in ticket revenue this year. We will set a record for overall revenue this year. Never before has there been more interest and engagement in the Dallas Wings than today. Any metric you want to look at basically is green and the arrow is pointing up, which we're fortunate for. Our building holds 6,251. So when you average 4,600, it feels good every night. We've sold out a couple of games this year, which we hadn't done before. There's a magic to College Park Center in that it's a basketball specific building. So it's very tight. And as a fan, you feel like you're on top of the court. There's not a bad seat in the building. The roof is also relatively low and it's metal. So the sound really bounces. You put 5,000 people in College Park Center, I'll put the environment up against anything, anywhere, anytime. And that's created a true home court advantage for us. Our players talk about it. You can feel it. The energy is palpable. So we love playing at College Park Center. And listen, these businesses take time. and it's taken time here. But for a variety of reasons, things have never been better, and the future has never been brighter.
The thing that I appreciate, respect, and understand that the Winds have seen throughout is just that the timeline has to be, it's not a 1 to 3 year timeline. It's not we're going to turn around and look and make sure that every dollar in is dollar out, and, evaluating in that way. And for whatever reason, that's, a series of shows, women's sports has always been treated in a different way like that. As somebody who covered the Brooklyn Nets and saw that in year 1 and 2, things were not attendance wise where they wanted them to go. And just this understanding that, these things take time. And you're seeing that, I think, on the court as well. It takes time to get it right. And so those two things interact to me in a way that offers a real opportunity for the Winds here in the coming weeks. And so let's talk about it in turn, right? You're talking about having, 5,000 people in that building, having home court advantage. This is a team that is in a very good position right now to be a potential top 4 finish. We've talked to Latricia Trammell about it, who, to my mind, has done an exceptional job here in year 1. And this has been a team goal. Does it feel to you like, you talked about the green arrows and arrows pointing up, like the on the court is that green arrow pointing up the way you were looking for it to be when you made the changes you did this past offseason?
I think so. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. We really haven't done anything yet. But as you mentioned, the trajectory is positive at this point. We are, as we speak today, sitting 4th, 1.5 game lead over the 5th place team, 2 game lead over 6 and 7, 4 game lead over the 2 teams tied for 8th. But hey, who's keeping track of these things? So we have 10 games to play. I mean, there is, as it always seems to be in the WNBA, there is a very condensed standings, if you will.
Right.
And who knows where we end up. But of our list of priorities coming into this season, I think we've talked about this before. Number 1 on the list was to finish in a top 4 position to obtain home court in the first round of the playoffs. So as we sit here with 10 to go, 3/4 of the season done, that's where we've positioned ourselves. And now we'll see what we do here over the next 10 games. But really, the ball literally and figuratively is in our court to achieve priority number 1 in the regular season.
It's true. And again, those two things to my mind can't be separated, right? Success on the court in terms of those moments where you grab people, you keep them for life. How many people have we talked to through the years who, they were in Minnesota when the Lynx win a championship, and suddenly they're Lynx season ticket holders. They're not just showing up for a game or two. And it's two things. It's who is doing it, and it's how they're playing. And so I want to take each in turn. I want to start with the how you're playing. And we've talked about this, right? This idea that you brought in Teaira McCowan, big, and you've got Kalani Brown now playing big minutes as well. And how do you dovetail that with playing fast? Well, Teaira McCowan's at 26 minutes per game, a shade below. You guys are 3rd in the league in pace. How satisfying is it to be able to see sort of that vision come to fruition for you guys?
There is nothing more satisfying than watching a big post run the court rim to rim and get an easy bucket off a long pass from a guard. There's simply nothing better. And to watch Kalani do that this year and to watch Teaira do that this year, there's like music that plays around me when I see that. And I've been so happy with the way Teaira's played. Because I have long believed, long before she actually put on a WNBA jersey, she had an opportunity to be one of the true impactful players of her time. I think it's all there for her. She just needs to go get it. And for Kalani, who, has struggled candidly to stay in the league, she recommitted herself in many ways this offseason. I was fortunate to be paying attention and seeing what she was doing overseas and seeing how she transformed herself physically and mentally. And to see her come in now and have sustained success and be a true part of our success has been really gratifying. So it's been good to see. And to your point, it's a virtuous cycle. The team plays well, that impacts the business. You have to have talent on the court to play well to impact the business, but then you have to have talent in the business on the business side in the front office to capitalize on that opportunity. And we're fortunate now that I feel like we have gotten to a point where we have top end talent both on the basketball operations side of our business and on the business side of our business. And I think what we've seen in terms of our success in growing our ticket base is a direct result of that, having the Amber Coxes and the Jen Fushis of the world that can capitalize on what we're seeing on the court.
No doubt, Fushi Squared and Amber are as big an addition as I can imagine. It's great to see. I will just say, and we'll leave the Teaira McCowan conversation here, which is to say the following. She is, we've talked about this, such an efficient player all time in true shooting percentage in the history of the league. She is 16th. She is 16th in the history of the league. She is just below Breanna Stewart, a little bit ahead of Diana Taurasi. I think she did something big recently, if memory serves. But 16th in the history of this league is mind-boggling. And then I think we'll have time. I need to read the list of players who have a higher rebound percentage in the history of the league than Teaira McCowan. I'm going to go ahead and read it, and we're done. She is number one all time. I assume you know this, Greg. I know you're a numbers guy like me, but for our listeners, that's the level of player we're talking about with Teaira McCowan. So as we've discussed, I am a big Teaira McCowan believer. I am delighted to see it. We're going to be right back to talk about Satou and also to Aurike, because very important part of this story in just a sec. So let's talk Satou first, because I'm not sure there's a more important development, forget Dallas, a more important development in the league than seeing that Satou has become a, whatever number you want to put on it, a top 10 player, a top 5 player. She's in my MVP ballot conversation that I'm having with myself every day as I'm trying to figure it out. And so from that perspective, I know health is one, right? Health is number one. And maybe that's everything. But what else are you seeing, and how does it connect with your player development program that has allowed her to become this caliber of player, the talent we always knew was there, but are now seeing it unlocked?
So as our public address announcer says during player introductions every night at College Park Center, the 6'4" unicorn. I just think that's a great line. But, I think health and confidence are tied together. It's hard to have confidence if you're not healthy, because it's hard to play to your ability if you're not healthy. And she has had, up until this season, a tremendous run of misfortune in terms of her health, and just couldn't get sustained health. This is the best league in the world, right? Bar none. There's 144 jobs, the best 144 on the planet, a little less than that, actually, if you look at rosters. So the talent is so condensed and so high level that everyone has to be at the very best, or they're not going to be able to perform. And she just hasn't been healthy. This year, she changed up her process around what is our off season and what is her overseas season, i.e. took some time off. And I think that allowed her to get healthy and stay healthy. And she came into camp this year 100%. And she came into camp basically on time and had a full training camp to ramp up. So that's number one, health. And tied to health, number 1A is confidence. And she is playing at a different level. And then I think coaching. I think Latricia has been a really good fit for her. I think Latricia has kind of taken the reins off and allowed Satou to play more freely, which is really leaning into Satou's strengths because of her versatility and her ability to do so many different things in so many different ways on the court. So I think there are a lot of reasons, but I think health, confidence, and coaching probably are the three main reasons that, in my mind, she is the most improved player in the league without question. And I think she's an all WNBA player under consideration for sure as well.
Absolutely. I'm hard pressed to imagine she's not ending up on my first team when it comes to it. Just so impressed with what she's done. And so to kind of bring that full circle with the team building aspect of it, and even the way this impacts the business, right? Arite at 26, Satou at 26. You got the extension with Arite done, and that obviously is significant. Satou, I would presume, is kind of job one for you guys this coming off season. Would that be fair to say?
I think that's fair to say.
And so you think about that team all together with Teaira in her age 26 season, and suddenly we're talking about the thing that you and I have talked about, frankly, on previous programs here, right? The success cycle, and you've now got this core in their prime seasons to go along with Natasha Howard, a little bit older, but providing that kind of veteran leadership. And I know from talking to your players that Tosh is such a big presence for them day to day. Does it feel as if, and that's a whole other conversation where the stops and starts and the reasons why, but does it feel as if you've got this team where you wanted it to go ahead of obviously a season ahead where you're going to also be incorporating some rookies, even some who haven't even yet to play this year, and Lou Lopez-Seneschal, for instance?
Yeah. So success is never a straight line, and it takes time. We've talked about this multiple times in the past. I made a decision 4 years ago that we were going to basically start from ground zero and rebuild. And it was going to be done largely through draft assets. And that just, there's no quick fix. There's no end around through that process. And there's pain to be endured. And we certainly have endured the pain. But yes, I think now the window is opened for us. We still haven't done anything. We sit here today, 2 games over 500 in 4th place. So that's great. Those are high water marks for us. But really, at the end of the day, history is not going to judge us favorably for finishing 2 games over 500 and finishing 4th. There's much, much, much more to do. But as I tell the team now all the time, I feel like outcomes of the game are more about us than they are about who we're playing. In the past, I don't think the talent was there for us that if we played against a team that played their best, we were necessarily going to win. Now I feel like we have enough talent that if we play our best basketball, we have a legitimate shot to beat anybody. And we've shown that this year.
Correct.
We've beaten 1, we've beaten 2, and we've beaten 3. Now we've also continued to display the inconsistency that has plagued us in the past, where we've lost some games candidly we shouldn't have lost. But it's there now. The talent's there. And it's for the most part, a young core of talent that we can keep together, as I've been talking about for a long time, for a relatively long amount of time. So I'm still crazy. I still may not know what I'm talking about, but maybe just a little less crazy than before.
Understood. And again, that 1, 2, 3, the fact that you guys win that, you see it so much of the time in scouting circles, right? Before somebody has it as a skill, you're seeing, oh, well, they flash the ability to have that skill. Do you feel like you have flashed what will be your expectation, let's say even going into 2024 of, all right, the consistency is the next level, or do you feel like this is something you expect to see by the playoffs?
Yeah, the hope is that the time is now. I mean, the WNBA is so much about health when you hit the playoffs and who's playing well. So we have 10 games to stay healthy and to really get back to how we were playing, last month. And I think we're going to be on the right track by the time we get to the, beginning of September. But the good news is there's still upside, not only upside with what we're putting out on the roster on the court today, but upside in terms of assets. And you referenced, the fact that Lou Lopez-Seneschal hasn't played yet. And we've been deliberate in making sure we're patient with her, getting her 100%. And whether that's this year or next year, when she steps on the court in a game that counts, she's 100%. Because she is, for my money, still one of the best pure shooters in the game, and we haven't had her take a shot yet. Stephanie Suarez, we traded for the number 4 overall pick in the draft. She is doing great in rehab, and we expect to have her next year. She hasn't played a game for us yet. So those 2 assets are already in the pipeline that we can count on adding next year. But we also, it wouldn't be a draft without having some draft assets heading into next year. And we have some draft assets. And, depending on how the rest of the season shakes out, those could be really exciting too.
Very true.
So I feel like we have the core. We've added some important pieces like Natasha Howard to help us learn how to do this along the way. Crystal Dangerfield as well. And then obviously Latricia has been a difference maker. But we have more, more arrows in the quiver, if you will, that we'll be able to lean into heading into next year and beyond.
Not to mention, of course, we have to talk about Poughkeepsie's own Maddie Siegrist and the fact that she is shooting 60, 50, 100 over the last 6 games.
Well, again, not to get too far into the weeds on numbers, but take a look at her player efficiency rating and where that is. And one of the hallmarks of Maddie and what really sold me on her during her college career, and now we're really getting into the weeds, but her assist to turnover percentage. Take a look at that number and where she ranks in the WNBA right now. So granted, small sample sizes, and there's been some phenomenal rookie play around the league this year that deservedly gets all the hype and all the attention and all the headlines because there's some great young players. But I'm still betting on Maddie Siegrist becoming an impact player in this league, and nothing I've seen this year has changed my mind.
It's a crazy number, 6.9% as a turnover percentage as a rookie, as you're making decisions in a league that's sped up. So yes, we are, as you know, both believers in Maddie Siegrist's future. And again, even just to tie it to what Latricia Trammell does, the fact that Maddie was not playing a lot early and she had her bought in and had her going. And I know part of that's Maddie's makeup, but part of that is a coach making sure everyone is bought in. It's really significant. And it's something that I think speaks volumes about who Coach Trammell is as well. So very interested to see what is ahead. Greg, always great to chat with you, and thank you on behalf of our listeners. To our listeners, make sure you're back with us tomorrow. Lexi Hull is going to be joining us from the Indiana Fever, who's having a breakthrough season. It's good to see that. Great to catch up with Lexi. Until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.